Here's how to play Starfield early. Can Xbox fans handle life without this game? I can't handle all of the Series S drama. Let's discuss. What's up guys, and welcome back to another edition of Xbox Ready, the YouTube channel that is dedicated to all things Xbox, like you might have guessed. I'm back with another news update. Y'all know how I do things if you've been watching me for a while. I gather stories from around the video game industry and share them with you to make sure that you're up to date, to make sure that you are Xbox ready. Couple of things, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it if you use the links down below this video to buy any Xbox stuff if you're in the market for that. And I would also appreciate a follow on Instagram. So for those of you who are not aware, Baldur's Gate 3 released last week. This is a party-based RPG that's set in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. A lot of people were looking forward to this game, including me. I have it downloaded, haven't played it yet, but early reviews seem to be very overwhelmingly positive. But the catch is that if you don't own a PC or a PlayStation 5, you cannot play this game. It was supposed to be coming to Xbox consoles, but the Xbox version has been delayed, much to the chagrin, the ire of Xbox fans. The developers behind Baldur's Gate 3, Larian Studios, mentioned months ago that they would have to delay the Xbox version because on the Series S, they weren't able to get split-screen multiplayer working. Or maybe it was working and it just wasn't like optimal, or it looked like doo-doo, I don't know. I don't know the whole details, but that's what they're saying. I've covered it a couple of times on the channel, but you know, the Series S, everyone dogpiled on it. It's being blamed for holding Xbox back, holding video games back, ruining people's lives. But then the creative lead behind Baldur's Gate 3 did an interview with SkillUp, and he was like, the Series S is not holding gaming back. It's just like another parameter that we have to work around. Kind of like working with lower end PCs and the Nintendo Switch or the Steam Deck, things like that. Well, now the communications director over at Remedy Entertainment has something to say about this whole situation as well. If you don't know Remedy Entertainment, they're the people that are behind the Alan Wake games, Control. He took to Twitter and said, "I feel Larian's pain on the Series S. It's not about just optimize at the end, LOL, nah. You have to take into account the technical limitations from the beginning of development. Nobody really wants to think of that when you're starting to make your game, when everything is possible." Now, I think what he was trying to go for here was that, you know, people are calling the people at Larian Studios the lazy. Oh, they're lazy because they don't have the time to optimize for the Series S and they don't want to, which is just not true. If you ever talk to someone who works in video game development, they're not lazy, man. They're working all the time. Whether or not you like the product that they come out with, they were working hard on that, man. So in that way, I kind of get it. But again, I think this is just adding fuel to the fire and causing people to way overreact. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. The Series S is not the only underpowered console on the market. And it's not that Baldur's Gate 3 was just not able to run on a Series S. Just a very specific feature was not able to run. And that's split-screen co-op. And because they couldn't get split-screen co-op on a Series S to run, and Microsoft has this policy saying, hey, you know, graphically, performance-wise, they can perform differently your game on the Xbox Series S versus the X, but they have to have the same features. They have to have feature parity. So again, very specific reason that Baldur's Gate 3 was delayed on Xbox. But meanwhile, this game is playable on Steam Deck. Not only is it playable, but if you go on the Steam page for Baldur's Gate 3, it even says that it's Steam Deck verified, which means that Baldur's Gate 3 passed all of the Steam Deck compatibility checks, and Steam is personally endorsing, saying this game will run great on the Steam Deck, which is, on paper, definitely not as powerful as a Series S. Now, we can go back and forth on this all day. Oh, the Series S is holding gaming back. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. We have a CEO of Larian Studios, the game where all this drama is surrounding regarding the Xbox version, also the creative lead on Baldur's Gate 3, saying no. The Xbox Series S not holding gaming back. This other guy takes to Twitter, I mean X, I'm sorry. I keep saying Twitter, it's X now. I gotta get used to that. This communications guy goes to X and tweets that, hey, Series S sucks. Guess which one people are gonna run with. We can go back and forth, but at the end of the day, we have to reckon with the hard truth as Xbox fans. And that's this game that is really good, that a lot of people were looking forward to, Xbox fans are missing out on. And arguments about the Series S aside, that's a huge loss for Xbox fans. We're already missing out on other games, whether it's like through just true exclusives or like third-party exclusivity deals. So this is just a bummer no matter what the truth is about the Series S. I think it would be worth having a conversation if you're over there at Microsoft, if you're over at Xbox, about dropping this feature parity rule for third-party games. I feel like as a consumer, if you go in knowingly buying the cheaper console, the Series S, I don't think people are expecting, or at least you shouldn't expect, all of the same features that you would be able to get in the same performance on a Series X, the more expensive model. That's certainly how it is in other areas of business, and especially Xbox's business. They're like, hey, we got Game Pass, just like the base Game Pass. It's this price, but if you want a more premium experience with more features, more games, more benefits, you can pay a little bit extra for Game Pass Ultimate. And honestly, I don't think that a lot of Series S owners would be mad that they weren't getting certain features from third-party games. I don't think that they would be super upset if this game shipped on the Series S, Baldur's Gate 3, and they weren't able to play split-screen co-op. They'd be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I got the cheaper console that is not as powerful as a Series X. I was sort of expecting things like that, in addition to, like, the graphical differences. But that's just me. I guess that might just be wishful thinking. Now, that's a different conversation for first-party games, because Xbox first-party studios, they have access to, like, engineers and the architects that worked on the Series S and the X. They have resources and accessibility to those people that third-party studios do not. So I don't think it's unreasonable for Microsoft to stick to their guns for first-party games and say, hey, all games that are developed by Xbox Game Studios, they have to have the same features on the S and the X. They can run differently, they can look different from, a graphical perspective, but they have to have the same features. But for third-party stuff, it's like, okay, maybe we can pull back on those rules just a little bit. In this scenario, I think it would have been worth it to have Baldur's Gate 3 launch at the same time as every other version of the game, versus having to go through this discourse in the news, oh, the Series S sucks, oh, our fans aren't able to play this game. If Microsoft is just like, hey, we'll make an exception, you don't have to have split-screen co-op working on the Series S, go ahead and ship the game, I feel like people would have been a lot happier. We could have avoided a lot of this. In the meantime, though, it's looking like engineers from Xbox are working with Larian Studios in order to get split-screen working on the Series S. But honestly, it's looking like this game isn't going to be shipping for Xbox until 2024. Which, hey, it might work to a lot of people's benefit. I don't know, Starfield is coming out soon. A lot of people are going to be wrapped up in that. That's a lot of content to work through. So I don't know if people are going to have the time to jump into another RPG. Maybe waiting until 2024 is schedule-wise ideal. But in terms of the optics, not ideal. Speaking of Starfield, would you believe that we are less than a month away from being able to play this game? I know that might sound a little bit confusing, but they are offering an early access period, up to 5 days of early access depending on what edition that you buy. And the good news is that if you have Game Pass, you can still get early access. So if you preload Starfield through Game Pass onto your Xbox console, and then go and buy the Premium Edition upgrade, that upgrade and all the benefits, including the early access period, will be applied to that preloaded version of Starfield that you got off of Game Pass. It'll save you a ton of money too, because right now the upgrade is priced at $34.99, so $35, $36 give or take. But keep in mind, because you're downloading the game through Game Pass, the upgrade that you are buying does not include a copy of the base game. If you want the game, plus all of the upgrades, plus the early access, you can buy that as a standalone thing. That'll be $100 though. So a lot more expensive than buying that $35 Game Pass upgrade. This is something that they've been doing for a while now. They did it for Forza Horizon 5, I remember. And I was like, that's a pretty cool feature. I'm glad that they're bringing it back. As I've said before, I'm super hyped about this game. You can literally be a space cowboy, Cowboy Bebop. How can I not be excited for this game? It's reported that there are multiple planets with maps that are bigger than Skyrim's map, like multiple Skyrims in one game. This is gonna be crazy. And according to Paris Lilly, aka Vicious over on the Kinda Funny Xcast, he knows someone, apparently, that has been playing Starfield. And from talking to this person that he knows who is playing Starfield, he is under the impression that reviews of this game, when they they finally come out are going to be reviews in progress because this game is so huge. Which makes sense. The main campaign for Starfield reportedly is 30 to 40 hours long, compared to Skyrim's, which is pegged at around like 15 to 30. And that's just the main campaign. This game apparently has 1,000 planets for you to explore. Yes, only 10% of those have any sort of life, quote unquote, according to Bethesda. But that's still 100 different planets, man. Like, I'll probably be lucky, like, within a couple of weeks to have explored, I don't know, like 20? I am curious to know, like, who this person is that Paris Lily is talking about. Maybe it's Paris himself and he's just kind of being coy because it's still under embargo, obviously. But I'm just gonna be straight up with y'all. I don't think that they're sending out review codes just yet. I'm pretty sure it's soon, but I'm just gonna be real with you, I don't have one, and I don't know anyone else who has one. Either way, the release of Starfield is just around the corner, and I personally cannot wait to check it out. Speaking of Bethesda, speaking of games you should be hyped about, have your eye on, apparently a remastered version of Quake 2 is going to be revealed at QuakeCon this year, which is literally just next week. This comes from this guy on X called Bilbilkun, who noticed that the game received an ESRB rating over in Korea earlier this year. Video Games Chronicle writes, according to the report, it's not clear if the game will be subtitled remastered or enhanced, as the listings that have been seen by Bilbilkun refer to both names. Now, I'm gonna be honest, guys, I'm not a big Quake guy. I played the first one a long time ago, but I have not kept up with the other Quake games in a very long time. But it would be cool to see some Quake 2 news over at QuakeCon. This stretch of time for Xbox could potentially be really big, like they have a really good QuakeCon, and then they go to Gamescom, and they have that big blowout booth there with Stalker 2 and Starfield and Motorsport. I'm looking forward to seeing the news that's coming out of these events over the next couple of weeks. And last but not least, I have a quick Xbox tip, quick Xbox guide, inspired by my friend Brian. So my friend Brian, he hit me up a couple of weeks ago and was like, hey man, I haven't owned a video game console or anything like that in a long time, but I played Assassin's Creed on my friend's Xbox Series S, and I kind of want to buy one. He was like, yeah, I'll probably try to buy one secondhand, like on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something like that. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Like, you can definitely find one that's in good condition on either of those websites. And then a couple days later, he hit me back. He's like, all right, man, I bought an Xbox Series S on Facebook Marketplace. I was like, oh, hell yeah, congratulations, man. Welcome to the Xbox family or whatever. But then yesterday, he was texting me because he wanted to buy a copy of Hogwarts Legacy. And he was confused because he was like, oh, I see there are different versions of this game, like one for Xbox Series X and one for S. I was like, no, the X and S version should be the same, and trying to explain the difference between that. We were going back and forth, and then eventually he sends me the link, and I see that he's trying to buy a pre-owned copy. And I was like, whoa, man, wait a minute. You gotta buy a digital copy because the Series S doesn't have a disc drive. And he goes, no, I have the Series S that has a disc drive. And I said, Hold up, brother. Unless you have like some sort of secret prototype or like something crazy like that, then you don't have a Series S. Send me a picture of your Xbox. And so he sends me this picture, and clearly that is an Xbox One S. And I had to break the news to him. I was like, that's not a Series S, brother. That's a One S. Like any normal person who doesn't spend their time playing video games and making YouTube videos about it, he was like, what's the difference, man? What are you talking about? So for anyone out there who is like my friend Brian, who you haven't had a gaming console in a long time and you're interested in picking up an Xbox maybe, or you're looking to buy one for a friend or loved one, your kid, your niece, your nephew, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, here is just a very quick guide as to all of the Xbox that are currently out there on the market or that you might run into. So let's start with the Xbox One. This obviously came out in 2013. This is a period of time where people are like, what's Xbox doing, man? They're doing all sorts of weird stuff. They're trying to make this like an entertainment system versus like a straight up video game console. They're bundling in the Kinect and making people buy this thing that they don't really want. What's going on? And on top of that, the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, they did not have the technical leaps that people were expecting. And so a couple of years later in 2017, Sony and Microsoft came out with their mid-gen refresh consoles. And Xbox was like, okay, we got the Xbox One X and the One S. The One X is like our top-of-the-line gaming console. You'll be able to play games at 4K resolution, which in reality, you weren't really able to. Sometimes yes, but a lot of times no. So if you want like our best gaming experience, get the One X. But if you don't care about all that stuff, we also have the Xbox One S as well, which is cheaper than the One X, but it's not as technically advanced. Graphically, the games aren't going to look the same, but it's still better than the Xbox One. And even within those two consoles, the One X and the One S, there was different versions. Like on the One S, there was one with a disc drive, and there was one that was all digital. And then finally, Xbox was like, 2020, it's time to turn over a new leaf. This is a new era for us, introducing the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, which will go down in history as just like one of the worst like naming progressions ever. Okay, maybe not the worst because the names itself aren't bad, it's just confusing. They just took out the one and inserted a series. So if you want to avoid the mistake that my friend Brian made, to put it simply, anything involving one in the name is technically old at this point. Ideally, you would want to buy the Xboxes that have series in their name. That's not to say if you buy an Xbox One S or a One X that you won't enjoy it. Like my friend Brian, he was messaging me and he was like, honestly, dude, I can't really tell the difference. I didn't notice anything like significantly crazy about my gameplay, and I'm enjoying my games anyway. I was like, that's great for you, man. And the majority of the people out there will probably agree with you. A lot of people on the internet get caught up in like, oh, it's gotta be 4K, it's gotta be 60 FPS at least, a minimum. But even though you can still enjoy it, there are a couple of things that you gotta keep in mind. Yes, on a One S or a One X, you'll be able to play a lot of the games like up until 2022, I would say. But keep in mind that Xbox is phasing out support for those older models. They're no longer making new Xbox Ones. And their first-party studios are not making new games for those older Xboxes anymore. A lot of third-party studios, they still make like cross-generational titles, but we're seeing less and less as we go on, except for like a few. I just saw that they were gonna bring Jedi Survivor to PlayStation 4 and like old gen consoles. I'm like, why? You could barely get it to run on the current gen and PC. Why would you go and port it to last gen consoles? So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Ideally, you would buy an Xbox Series X or S because technically that's gonna last you for the rest of this console generation and then a few years into the next one. It's long-term, I would say, a better investment. Anyways, guys, that's all the news I have for today. Shout out to Paris Lily over at Kinda Funny, aka Vicious, and shout out to my friend Brian, who has joined the Xbox family, but he's running on that One S. He doesn't have that Series S yet, but he's perfectly happy.